everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is RPMbassy with John and Mark. Today we're going to be going through a little bit of a countdown of some compilation records that we really enjoy. This isn't anything like a top 10 per se, it's not any particular order, but we are going to be looking at 10 records. But there's no order of preference or anything like that. We're just going to be talking about some records that we enjoy, and no doubt in the future we'll be doing more of these episodes just to highlight some compilations that we think you should check out. So to start off, I'm going to be going for a record called Contemporary Jazz. So this is a German compilation from Tramp Records. They're a very, very small sort of indie label, but they're quite prolific. They release a ton of compilations. And I mean, they've been going for sort of 20 odd years now, I think. And they had a singles release just in January, or like a singles compilation, I should say. It's Tobias Kirscher, I think his name is. I forget exactly. Something like that. It's Tobias Kermeyer is his name. So yeah, this is, as the name would suggest, it's sort of highlighting some interesting and rare jazz pieces from the time. This was 2010. There's some really, really cool records or album songs on this one. Highlight tracks on this from me are track 2, Das Goldene Zeitalter, featuring Baker.
We'll put it in the comments.
I have no idea if that's correct. There's a few different sort of foreign records and stuff in here that I'm going to completely butcher throughout this. But that track in particular is really phenomenal. The vocals on it, presumably Bakia, very similar to Beth Gibbons from Portishead. But it's all over, like, obviously they had like jazzy influences in their music, but this is like very jazzy. And she's got that same kind of like almost smoky kind of vocal. And that song in particular is really, really phenomenal. Love how that sounds. And same goes for The Sugar Man, which is another one which has got some really, really cool vocals and bits and pieces going on in there. The whole album is great, but those two in particular are phenomenal. As I say, they're still going to this day, so it's worth checking out their other bits and pieces.
Tramp Records?
Yeah, Tramp Records, sorry. The sort of singles collection that they've done recently is really, really cool. And he does do a really good job of highlighting some really interesting artists and sort of releasing cool sort of indie level stuff where like other people may not have ever heard of it. So it's really, really worth checking this label out as a whole.
Is it a compilation only label?
Or no, there are. This January release that he's just done. I say just done. That's 5 months ago now, basically. That's from what I can gather is mostly singles that he has put out via his label. So he's quite prolific, as I said, but it's a lot of smaller names, individual songs rather than full albums and stuff like that. But like they are quite cool at highlighting some really interesting things. And he's been DJing for years, so like his pedigree and like knowledge is phenomenal. He really knows what he's on about. But yeah, that's a really good one to check out. Really inexpensive as well. I didn't have to pay too much for this when I got it. It was kind of one of those ones that I sort of picked up just like on a spree.
What did you get from a shop or Discogs?
This one was Discogs, right. But whenever I shop on Discogs, I don't know if you do this, but I basically find records that I know I'm after, and then because there's always postage fees and stuff that every time I buy albums on Discogs, the postage fee is like a flat fee for one versus like 5 albums.
Yeah. And
in my eyes, I might as well pick up 5
from the same
seller. So I always just go through and I see like, oh, what have they got cheap? What kind of interesting stuff is there? Is there anything I've never heard of? Even just like stuff that I like the cover, like I'm intrigued by the cover and it's under a tenner, I'll just grab it. And this was one of those. Like it was just like a random pickup. I just thought, fuck it, let's just see what this is. I like picking up jazz records in the first place. And this was one of those ones. It was just a nice, happy accident. I'd never heard of it before. And then, I looked into it and actually, this label is pretty damn solid.
I've been using Discogs quite a lot lately because as I've been doing these top 10s and like, I'm realising albums I thought I had, I no longer have. But I don't know where they've gone. For instance, like when I did the Susie and the Banshees, I was wanting to put Juju in there. Yes, I couldn't find it. So I've been buying more stuff off. And like when I did the Visage, there was a couple of 12 inches missing that I swear I had. I can't find them, so I bought them all again. So Discogs has been taking my money quite a lot lately.
It's such a such a solid place to buy things from. I really just love the stuff that they do as far as like a shop front, and I presume that everybody watching this has heard of Discogs, but if for any reason you haven't, like, as far as a resource for knowledge, a resource for buying, getting individual like dates for pressings and stuff like that, like, it's absolutely indispensable. It's got shit that like Wikipedia is never going to tell you, so it's, that's a great platform for sure.
Well, my first compilation I'm going to talk about is quite a relatively new compilation. It came out last year, and it was compiled by Johnny Slut, who was in a band, obviously I'll tell you what it is in a minute, called Specimen. It's someone on a personal level, also used to run 999 Records, Atomizer. But the compilation I'm talking about is Young Limbs of Rise Again. And it's a compilation of, it's all centered around a club called the Batcave from the early 80s, very gothic. So it was kind of post-punk, coming down gothic, like, think of Susie and the Banshees. Everything just went really gothic. And again, it was like an alternative to the Blitz. So you had the New Romantics and the combination of the Batcave, and it's famous exactly the same as like the Blitz. You had a lot of famous people going to the Blitz, the Batcave. So you can imagine what kind of tracks are going to be on here. Like you've got Virgin Prunes, Sisters of Mercy, Specimen, The Birthday Party, Killing Joke. You've got the Cramped Human Fly, which is crazy. You've got the Cure, Susie and the Banshees, and there's a track on here which I absolutely love, is Incubus Succubus 2, Ex-Mel Deutschland. Which is like one of my favourite tracks. Brilliant band as well. You've got the Gina Loves Jezebel, and you've also got a track in it called I Wish I Was a Girl, and we did a collaboration with Atomizer which had Johnny Slut in the band, and we did a version of I Wish I Was a Girl. I never realised it was an actual tune. I thought he had done it there and then, until this compilation came out, and it's a brilliant compilation. The Batcave ran from 1982 to 1985. This is the 2 LP set, but they've also got things like 4 LP set version of this. They've got the CD version of this, which have got like hundreds more kind of tracks. So I think what he's done, he kind of picked out the standout tracks from that. If you've not heard of the Batcave, do some research, because the tracks that are around at that particular time, and it was a club that was put together by the band Specimen, and they wanted somewhere where they could rehearse and like do, play out their tunes, and it just kicked off really. But the inner sleeves are great, so you can imagine what kind of freaks, I love them, went there. And this is Johnny Slut then, and obviously up on the wall that's Johnny Slut now. His look has always been iconic, Johnny Slut, and his musical knowledge is incredible. He's put together quite a few compilations, but this one here is something else. Soul Inside, Soft Cell, tune. It's one of my favourite Soft Cell tracks in that as well. But that is the 2 vinyl compilation from Young Limbs Rise Again. Still available. I think it was done on it's quite a limited press. So I think they're kind of starting to sell out. If you can get your hands on it, get your hands on it. It's definitely worth having. Nice,
I love that. Like the sort of capturing of a feeling and a mood, not just, obviously this is like highlighting a genre and going after particular artists, but that's kind of like, that's almost like a cultural movement in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And the people who used to go to the Batcave, can now listen to all that stuff they used to listen to back then. Just like in Berlin, my production partner, Kinky Roland, used to go to a club in Berlin called the Metropole, which is a famous club night, and he's compiled a compilation of the stuff that used to be played there as well, and people loving that. So, and obviously our last album that came out was called Punx in 3D, and it was a homage to the club The Ghetto. So even though it wasn't compilation stuff that was played, it was the tracks we made were influenced by the sound
you're capturing
of the Ghetto.
that sort of vibe from that
so
era,
I think there's a lot of that going on at the moment, a bit of nostalgia, people looking back at these great clubs, and these clubs are where movements were born. Like the whole goth movement really came out of this scene. The New Romantic came out of the Blitz. So I think clubs are kind of the start of new movements.
Nice, I love that. Amazing. So next up, I've got Classic Plant from the record Leaf. Technically, I think they're called the Leaf label. So this is a cool sort of... it's kind of an eclectic mix. You've got kind of down tempo, ambient, some drum and bass, particularly like liquid drum and bass and stuff like that. Very evocative of the era. This is a 1998 compilation put together by Tony Morley. He's the sort of head of the label. He used to work at 4AD.
Oh, nice.
He was like a marketing researcher or something there. But then he moved on and formed this label. And yeah, the sort of tracks that we've got on here, you've got names like Ronnie and Clyde, Fortet, like stuff that people will actually have heard of, for one. And yeah, it's some really cool little picks of like weird, slightly off-kilter kind of highlights from the genre. So like the Fortet song on here, Field, I think probably a lot of people maybe have heard of him in more recent years because he's kind of gotten quite big into like he does like a live stream now, which is like a constant 24-hour live stream of his tracks, and he has like generative art and stuff, and that sort of thing obviously is super big online now. But these tracks obviously is kind of from 20 years ago, 30 years ago almost, and there's like a real rawness and a real like, it's almost discordant, like it's still like ambiently influenced, there's still like a relaxing kind of aspect to it, but it's very jazzy again, but with the approach of electronic music. Other tracks on here that I really, really love, Sons of Silence, Silence Go Boom, that's a phenomenal track. Witchman, 4am on Point, that, what a good title for that song. 4am on Point, it sounds like 4am. I don't know if you remember, like when we did our top 20 albums.
Yeah.
I did the 2814. It was that sort of vaporwavy one with all the Japanese, purple Japanese stuff on the front. That has a very similar feel to, or they both share very similar feelings. Like this 4am on Point, it's the kind of thing that you would sort of expect to have gotten from DJ Shadow, but like a few years later. Really sounds like super washy and like loads of phaser all over everything, and it's a really slowed down like drum break that like sampled stuff. There's loads of like plunderphonicsy type stuff all over this, and it sounds like 4am. It's the kind of thing you can imagine, like you like fucking knackered, probably a bit drunk, walking home at 4am, and it just has that kind of swirly feeling. That song in particular, Witchman, 4am on Point, it sounds like 4am and it really is on point. Cool. Fantastic track.
Brilliant. I need to check out these compilations. This is the thing, you know, every time we do this, I don't know any of your stuff.
Yeah.
But you know all mine. And I think it matches quite well, really, because it's a bit boring with exactly the same genre. The next compilation I've got is one of my favourite compilations. Again, it's of a time, it's of a sound. And this was the early noughties. But this album came out in 2002, compilation. And around about that time, it was the whole Electric Clash, who we were quite big in that particular scene. And there was a label quite early on as well caught onto that sound, and it was City Rockers. Now it was Damon Lazarus had something to do with City Rockers. They kind of signed things like Tiga, you know, Sunglasses at Night. So they did the UK because it came out in Jiggle, and they did the UK version of that. So they kind of jumped on the Electric Clash kind of wagon really early on and done it well as well. So what they did, they released this compilation first, and there's some like the classics from this particular scene, all on one vinyl. And the other thing I liked about the vinyl as well, I used to play this out so many times. Came out on CD as well. You got the pink vinyl.
That's a
nice,
really nice pink, yeah.
You've got the pink vinyl, you can see that there. And then you've got the white vinyl as well. And this is quite good for them because basically these were playable. A lot of the compilations you'd be on like one piece of vinyl, you couldn't really play them out. But these ones, there's plenty of space. The split mode 2 vinyl, and that was quite unique back then as well. But City Rockers were just smashing it. They'd had two compilations now. I had this one, they had a green one. But I don't think the green one came out on vinyl, I think it just came out on CD. But on here you've got things like Tok Tok versus Sofio, Missy Queen's Gonna Die. That's one of the earliest, what they call Electric Clash tracks I remember. And I remember I didn't even hear of this genre. I was DJing in Hamburg, and I went to a record shop and I heard this being played in the record shop. and I bought this along with it's on here as well. Frank Sinatra with Miss Kitten and the Hacker, like really early on. And they're on here, and you've got Peaches, Lover Tits, which is a great track. You've got things, Chicks on Speed, Eurotrash Girl. Our very first record we did as Punx Soundcheck was Eurotrash Boy, which is our take on this. It's almost like an answer record.
Yeah.
And that done this really well. That has got us signed, that got us remixes. But it was because of this track here. Treat Me Better, Northern Light, Zombie Nation, Kernkraft. Everyone knows that kind of track.
Yeah.
It's such an iconic track. You've got Fat Truckers, Superbike, and this is really early on. Fat Truckers didn't really make a presence until like 2-3 years later on Gigolo. So this is quite early on. You've got Miss Kitten, Ripping Kitten. You've got Felix the House Cat on here. So every track on here is like the bomb. Every track. And I just loved kind of City Rockers kind of style. They just used to come out in plain. I think I've got a whole pile of City Rockers. It's just a plain colour and a sticker on it.
Nice.
So kind of uniform. But I loved that label. Then they suddenly just disappeared. The last kind of like, they started kind of moving away from the Electro Clash and tried to got a bit noodly. The tracks weren't so I kind of lost interest. I think so did everyone else, and all of a sudden City Rockers just disappeared. But it did have a time. It was a label that everyone wanted to be on. It was a London label as well, which we were proud of, because obviously you had Germany with Gigolo, we had City Rockers.
Yeah.
So that is my favourite compilation right now. Even now, I listen to it, I thought, I love every track. And that is City Rockers with Futurism on pink and white vinyl from 2002.
So next up, we've got Belgrade's Burning. This is from Cosmic Sounds London. So this label, from what I can gather, is basically a label that the owner founded pretty much to release his own music. I'm going to butcher this name 100%. Zelko Kaleta. So he's from Belgrade in Serbia.
Convincing.
And this is sort of a highlight of artists from Belgrade. And like, to be fair on him, it wasn't just a label for his own music. He had a lot of releases from other Serbian and like Eastern European artists as well. He kind of like, that was one of his main sort of things, was to try and highlight other small artists from the region. But this is a really, really cool look into sort of 2000s, early 2000s and late 90s era sort of drum and bass and down tempo and stuff. Very similar actually to the last one. They share a lot of similarities, but this has got some really, really cool little bits from artists that I have never heard of, and like some of them that they basically were together for a year. One of them in particular is Linear Draft with the song Recycle. That track, like, that is up there in terms of liquid drum and bass, like one of the best tracks I've ever heard. But they as a group, I think it was a group of 4 people, and I'm not even going to attempt their names because it's like they're very, very European sounding names. But yeah, they were together for about a year, and if you can find their SoundCloud now, they've got like dozens and dozens of really cool tracks and like all kinds of weird ambient things, like using PCM samplers and things, like shit that I love. And yeah, like obviously no one's ever heard of them because they were together for a year from Serbia. They basically just like put music out, and this is the kind of like, this is at the most the exposure that they got. But those sorts, that's again is why I love compilations, because they force you to explore stuff that you may never have heard of. But it really does kind of like feel like a bit of a labour of love, this release. Like, as you can see, it's like not the like highest quality in terms of the packaging or anything like that, but you know, he's written up bits and pieces for the tracks and things, and like he highlights why he loves it. So like, for example, the Linear Draft track, they were recommended to me by a friend who knew I wasn't really into house / electro dance ambient that Linear Draft were doing. Checking the material, I got hooked on this track for the jazzy feeling. Smooth and catchy sax is a winner, which, yeah, I totally agree with it. It really, really phenomenal sounding stuff. And this is another one like with the previous compilation where it sort of jumps back and forth between down tempo drum and bass, weird sort of ambient house, like just a really cool highlight of album or artists that no one's ever heard of. and I assume it's all legit in terms of the licensing, but these are such small artists. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a sort of
They
like
didn't know anything about
little
it,
bit of a kind of pirate put together. But yeah, really, really awesome stuff on this one. And I think the guy now, the guy who compiled it, Coletta, I think he's like an architect now or something like that. Like just like moved on to completely different things.
Well, it's definitely not a record sleeve design. And what I like about the back, you've got a fire extinguisher, which is literal.
Yeah.
Bell goes burning. But the front,
I don't know.
I just love that.
Yeah.
It's just...
But yeah, it's such a cool little highlight of artists that, you know, obviously anyone from anywhere can make any type of music. But when I think drum and bass, when I think ambient house and stuff, I don't immediately think Serbia. But this is like a really nice way of highlighting, like, here's the talent that we've got. Here are some of the artists that you should check out. Granted, you know, 24 years ago now, and half of them probably aren't even together. But I think, as I say, it's a labour of love. You've got a little write-up of everything, why he loves it, why he chose it. And I think that's just a really nice sort of personal kind of compilation. Really enjoy that.
Nice. The one I've chose next is, as a music producer, people know one of my all-time favourite instruments is the 808, the TR-808 drum machine. I do have one in Brixton. It will be coming back here soon. But this is, it's quite limited as well. I didn't realise how limited this was. But this is 808, the music, the original soundtrack. If anyone knows the 808, this is the actual colour of the switches on the actual drum machine itself. And what they've done, they've actually compiled like big tracks that use the 808. Even I was surprised. I didn't realise that. Parental advisory, explicit content. I love that. And inside you get a nice big fold out, the big 808 map, and obviously the information on the machine itself. Nothing else on the inside, but this is all the tracks that have been done with the 808. And I think this was a soundtrack to, I think it might have been on Netflix or something. It's all about the 808, where it came from Japan. It was a Roland drum machine, and it influenced, you know, it was big in the hip hop scene. It was huge. But great tracks on here, like the classic that we all know is African Mobata and the Soul Sonic Force, Planet Rock. Beastie Boys, Paul Revere, Public Enemy, Your Bum Rush the Show, Man Parish, Hip Hop Bebop. You know, those 4 tracks there kickstarted the whole kind of hip hop electro. I've got another compilation in a minute, but I've got loads of old school hip hop electro in there. And again, you've got Planet Patrol, Shannon, Let the Music Play, Tilo Rock, Jazzy J, 808. So a lot of kind of hip hop stuff in here, but you've also got Felix the House Cat. He did a track called Kick Drum, which is on here, which is all just the 808. And then you've got a few kind of later things as well. Little John the East Side Boys, Flux Pavilion, Vibrate. So the kind of
that was a big
dubsteppy
track, yeah.
Yeah, so that was using 808. Because a lot, especially the dubstep guys, love the kind of boom.
Oh yeah,
the
the
808,
kick and like over compress the shit out of it and saturate it, yeah.
Lil Wayne and I don't tend to listen to Slide D. They've got Jamie XX. Gosh, I don't tend to listen to that. But the compilation, CD compilation, had a lot more tracks on it. What I liked about it, it was like tracks that... one of the first tracks to use the 808 was Sexual Healing. Marvin Gaye was the first record to use, an actual record that came out to use the 808. Then he got using things like Whitney Houston, and I wish it kind of showed a little bit more of the history of this. Get rid of side D. You know, they got rid of side D and just did like, you know, I suppose if you couldn't get licensing for the vinyl or anything like that. But yeah, I wish it kind of showed like the earliest records. But yeah, you heard it here first. Marvin Gaye, Sexual Healing was the first record to use the 808. And that is 808 the music, the original soundtrack. And there was a program on this. I can't remember what channel it was on, but it was all about the 808. And you had interviews with like artists and, you know, programming it. You had people like Egyptian Lover. It was like, he is all about the 808.
Yeah.
I think you had Alex Stark, who is quite a relatively new electro producer. When I say relatively new, like, you know, maybe he's been around for like 20, 25 years. But he's all about the 808 and used to do things like the 808 compilations and stuff.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So yeah, that is my next compilation for you to check out, the 808 the music.
Bang in.
Mark.
So up next, we've got Home Cooking. So this is from Ubiquity Records. Ubiquity is kind of like a broader record label, and then they've got sort of their own individual sub-labels, but it's all owned by two people, Jody and Michael McFadden. They owned a record shop, I think it's called Groove Culture or something like that, in San Francisco. They started that in like 1990 or 1991, and then the label was started in 1993. And the general sort of gist of this is very jazzy, very interesting. Again, picks from sort of like the emergent kind of jazz and hip hop, plunderphonics, DJ kind of culture that would have been starting around that time. They're still going now as a label. Like they're like prolific on Instagram. They post about new artists all the time. There's like a really random one I found, which was like it's like a jazz, country, and western group from Leeds that are on their label. Like a group that I would never even assume like those things put together would create what they are. But yeah, this is a really cool one to check out. If you're into sampling, this is one to check out, not just because of the samples that you could get from it, but also because of the samples that some of these tracks have used. It's sort of a mix of like original stuff and then sampled stuff. You've got stuff like Grey Boy or DJ Grey Boy, which is a really, really awesome track. Unwind Your Mind, that's the first track on the album. Grey Boy's been sort of like, I haven't seen anything released from him since about 2003-ish, but he's done some really, really cool albums, and very similar to like Bonobo, that sort of like instrumental hip hop kind of vibe, a little bit more aggro in some tracks and a lot shorter tracks. Like a lot of his albums, he has like 7 or 8 big tracks and then loads of little almost like skits in between, but they're instrumental bits and pieces. So his like releases are really good to check out. Pork Pie Stride by Sharpshooters as well on side B. That's another really cool one. That has a amazing drum beat. I'm not sure if that is like a live recording that's then been used on the track, or if that was sampled from something. I can't pick up exactly where it's from, but that sounds absolutely excellent. So yeah, like if you're into that kind of hip hoppy, plunderphonicsy kind of stuff, like definitely give this one a listen, because there's some cool little bits and pieces again that I'd never heard of. And as I say, they're still going now. This was 1993, so they've been going for 31 years coming up, and yeah, they've got a real eye for this stuff, and I think it makes sense. They owned a record shop. They know what they're doing. They know where the good shit is, and this is like a nice pick of what they would have probably had from those first few years of the record shop. And as I say, they like dozens and dozens of compilations over the years. Like they just keep releasing stuff. There's all kinds of stuff out there from Ubiquity, so they're worth diving into and seeing what they've kind of found over the years, because it's highlighting some really, really cool little artists. Yeah.
I love the word cooking. I find a lot of like jazzy, and we had like cooking vinyl.
Yes.
You know, a lot of them are using the word cook.
Yeah, it really paints a particular picture, and I think perhaps they did it to slightly misdirect it, because I had the assumption to begin with that this was going to be like a lot sort of more old school sounding.
Yeah.
But actually, for the time that this would have come out, this would have been really, really kind of like modern in terms of the beats and the sampling and stuff like that. It sounds really, really for the time, and in a way, like you can hear how like other artists would have taken that sound, and then it would have gone on to be sort of like big in terms of hip hop culture in the late 90s.
Because they've tried to kind of model the sleeve on, like you look at these old jazz compilations.
Yeah.
But the fact they've got like 7-Up on the front, I mean that's. Maybe they're sponsored by 7-Up.
Maybe, yeah. Or I mean, as I say, they're not a huge label, so maybe they didn't even care. Perhaps they'd never got the release for it, and 7-Up never thought it was worth chasing up, or maybe 7-Up don't even know. But yeah, I love that. It's putting stuff together. It's just out of passion. There's no pissing around with the legalities and stuff on it. Just like here's some stuff to enjoy. Yeah.
Cool. So my next one is I can't have. Sort of without I release some Gigolo, and this one is called New Deutsch, and it came out in 2002, 2003. So again, it's quite early on, 2003, which is a good year for this kind of sound. And obviously Gigolo were just smashing it at that particular time. This just came out of the blue, and it totally kind of side hooked us, because it's like, wait a minute, you're releasing all this kind of like Fisher Spoon, Electric Clash, all of a sudden this came out. I bought it anyway. I thought, oh, just check it out. But this is DJ Hell has got such a his A&R and his knowledge is vast, because what he's done, he's obviously collected stuff from 1995 of German electronica, and all artists I've never ever heard of. And the fact that he was confident in pressing up this on vinyl and CD and knowing that people were going to pick this up. So it was compiled by Thomas Barr and DJ Hell, and it was basically German electronica, i.e. New Deutsch. I don't know why I got New Deutsch, because some of it's from 79, 95. So this is 2003, and like I don't know any of the artists on here at all, and it's proper like German electronica.
Nice.
Some of it sounds really kind of homemade. I kind of like that about this album, but then it goes into kind of shouts to like Trevor Jackson, James Murphy of DFA, who are the kind of names there, Paul Moog, Psychonauts, Terra Nova, Berlin. Yeah, and he said it there. Yeah, so extra thanks to Martin Clearfield. You made this record possible. So he must have hunted down these artists, man. But it's a really good album, and you want to hear some stuff out of the norm. This is it. A great compilation, double vinyl as well, which is great. Gigolo number 106, just to let you know. And just to let you know, he's also thanks Raf Simons on this as well. Raf Simons is one of my favourite designers, and he's wearing Raf Simons on the front here. Because 2003, he was massive, Raf Simons as well. And it's got the best Gigolo logo on here with Sid Vicious. That was the best logo. But yeah, so that's my compilation, New Deutsch, on Gigolo Records. German Electronica, 79 to 95. 79 to 95, yeah. And you would not recognise any of these names. Brilliant. Check it out.
Amazing. So next up, I've got Renegade Hardware and the Fire EP. So this is part of the Four Elements selection, but I just wanted to highlight this one in particular. This is a 2002 compilation, and it's essentially kind of collected singles that Renegade Hardware would have released. So they're a drum and bass label. They were part of another label, and then they sort of went indie. After a while, I think like the original label kind of folded, and they kind of took it and made it all independent. But I never realised, or I probably did realise, but I'd forgotten over the years. But Renegade Hardware like released some really like early singles for some quite big names. Chasing Status's first ever EP was released via Renegade Hardware. Pendulum had stuff on there. Wow. There's all kinds of like different people. If you look at them and go through their discography, like their really early singles, like 7 inches and stuff like that, like, oh, that's Renegade Hardware. Like really, really interesting to see that sort of stuff. The two standout tracks on this are the first two songs on the EP. So Raiden Abyss is a fantastic track. It sounds like it's so evocative of that era of drum and bass. Like it basically sounds like a PlayStation soundtrack. The like Reese bass in it is so heavy and aggressive, and you've got these weird like stabby synths and stuff in it. When I think of like drum and bass at its core, that in my head is sort of what I expect to hear, like a really aggro drum and bass. And he's like still going now. I think he's from Southampton. He's been doing music for like 20 odd years, and that track in particular is fantastic. But even his like solo albums, they're all worth listening to. Like a really, really good artist to dive into. And the second track, Speed Demon by Baron, that's another amazing track. And I think at the time that this would have come out, he would have been like 17 or 18, like really, really young to be having stuff like properly released. But again, he's got some really, really cool stuff. He distributes all of his stuff on Bandcamp now. He basically just has like one release, and it's just like all of the singles that he's done over the years just in one big release. I don't even know if he like put a lot of effort into it, because it's still got like when you chuck a file into, or when you like render out a track, and it will like put the underscores in between each word. Like the files still have that on the Bandcamp release, so I think he's just kind of gone like, here's all my singles,
just
put
give
it straight out. But yeah, as I said, this is part of the 4 elements, so there are 3 other parts to this one, but this is the best one of the 4. It was released later on down the line as a CD compilation where it had 4 more tracks, so it ended up being 16 instead of 20 instead of 16, I should say. But yeah, this one's probably the best one of the bunch, and that Raiden track at the beginning, really, really awesome. Like, it's so heavy and aggressive, and it's a really cool way to kind of delve into what would become sort of like quite a particular sound for the early 2000s for that sort of like drum and bass sound. But my next one up is going to sort of be that same sort of era, but veering the other way.
Right.
But we'll get into that in a minute.
Awesome. So my next one, look at the state of that vinyl, man. This came out in... Can you read that?
1985.
Okay. So my next compilation, so I haven't got my glasses on, so I couldn't see that. So my next compilation is... it's one of the compilations I've probably listened to so many times, and you can tell by the state of this vinyl. Marc will vouch for that. This was a series of compilations that came out called the Electro, out on Street Sounds, which I was obsessed with. Obviously, at that point, I was into the hip hop electro, the breakdancing, all of that. This came out in 1985. This is number 6. It did go all the way up to 13, and then it changed its name to Hip Hop Electro instead of just Electro, and then it kind of went downhill then. But up to that point, it was just on fire. I mean, the back, they always give you the stuff that you're missing. I've still got all of these. I think I've got a big pile here. All the Electro albums. So to me, this is probably definitely one of the best kind of compilation series going. Because obviously all the stuff that's coming out in America, all the electro, all the hip hop, we were blown away by movies like Beat Street, and we knew kind of things like Grandmaster Flash, all this, but we didn't know any of this stuff. So this is our kind of insight and our education into the hip hop electro sound and rap, and some of the rappers and some of the producers out there. And out of all of them, this is probably my favourite, and this is Electro 6, as you can see, a bit obvious. But this had things like, which are now iconic tracks, which is Roxanne, and this was put together by DJ Morris, and like the mix on this is like, considering back then they didn't really have, couldn't really pitch them, all that, we didn't have the decks that we had nowadays. Yeah. Like the mixing on here is incredible, and one of the things that was great back then was a lot of what we call answer records, and one of them was Roxanne. There was a group of like these female MCs called Roxanne, and they were doing all these answer records. Obviously, the best one out there, the most original one, is Roxanne Shante, but you had the real Roxanne. You had there was all these answer records out. It was just brilliant, and one of the ones is a band called UTFO. They did a track called Roxanne, and then Roxanne Shante come out with a diss record for UTFO and really like hammered them. Then they came out another one, Roxanne's Revenge, and it was just brilliant. And this is the first time we got to hear all of them put together on the same side. So you had like the Roxanne, UTFO, you had Captain Rock, you had Houdini, Egyptian Lover. We were just talking about Egyptian Lover with the 808 compilation. Beat Freak, Bobby Boom, Dougie Fresh, his first ever record, the Human Beatbox. He's on it twice. So yeah, this compilation is like, I played it so many times, man. I nearly broke my legs, and, spun on my head so many times with this record. And every time I see this, it always kind of warms the cockles of my little old heart when I see this compilation. And this is the original one that I bought. Street Sounds were doing it, and they've just come around again. I've literally just bought on the Electro 2. They just a beer company did a limited edition box set of like electro beers. So they did these beers, and you can get one from like 1 to 10, and I bought number 2. So it's beer cans with like the electro artwork and everything in the box. There's all Street Sounds, it's brilliant. I should have brought it down and showed you this, but that's my favourite compilation when it comes to this, Electro 6 Street Sounds. Check it out.